In the life sciences industry, there's this huge shift happening, almost like a quiet revolution. It's a fundamental change in how we think about software quality, moving away from this old, paperwork-heavy process called computer system validation, or CSV, to a much smarter, more modern approach called computer software assurance, that's CSA. And if you work in any kind of regulated space, you know this isn't just a minor update, it is a total game changer. So let's start with a really important question. I want you to think about your own validation process for a second. Is it genuinely designed to protect patients and make sure your product quality is top-notch? Or does it feel more like a machine that's just built to churn out endless stacks of paper? That exact tension right there is the reason we're seeing the big change we're about to dive into. Okay, so before we can really appreciate the new way of doing things, we have to understand the old one. Let's take a look at the traditional approach, computer system validation. For literally decades, CSV was the gold standard. It's this super painstaking, methodical process designed to prove that a system does exactly what it's supposed to do. Now, the goal was solid, right? But in practice, it became famous for one thing above all else, being incredibly documentation heavy. And that laser focus on documentation, well, it creates this whole domino effect of problems. The process just gets slow and rigid. You end up with these massive mountains of paperwork that often bury the actual goal, which is ensuring quality. But maybe the biggest flaw of all is its one-size-fits-all mentality, where every single piece of software gets the same exhaustive and exhausting level of scrutiny. So what was the breaking point? Well, the industry, and just as importantly, the regulators, started to realize that the old model was just broken. And that sparked a completely new way of thinking about what compliance should really be. And listen, this isn't just some new trend bubbling up from inside the industry. This change is coming straight from the top. The FDA itself is actively pushing companies toward this more modern, risk-based approach. That's not just a friendly suggestion. That's a crystal clear signal that the rules of the game are fundamentally changing. And here's where the old model just completely falls apart. Under the old CSV rules, a super complex system that's literally controlling the drug manufacturing process could get the exact same level of validation work as, say, a simple feature that manages data for the facility's landscaping. I mean, does that make any sense? Of course not. Treating those two things with the same level of rigor doesn't improve patient safety one bit. It just wastes time, money, and your team's valuable energy on things that have very little risk. This is where the new way comes in. So let's talk about computer software assurance, or CSA. So what is this CSA thing, really? It's so much more than just another three-letter acronym to memorize. It's a complete mindset shift. It's a risk-based approach that lets us focus our testing efforts and our resources on the areas that have the highest impact, the things that directly affect patient safety and product quality. So how does this actually work in the real world? Well, it all boils down to CSA's core principle, intelligent risk-based testing. It all kicks off with a structured risk assessment. First, teams analyze the different software functions and figure out what could possibly go wrong. Then, they look at the likelihood and the severity of any potential failures. This lets them categorize every function as high, medium, or low risk. And that final step is the most important. They tailor the testing strategy based on that risk. It's about being smart, not just being exhaustive for the sake of it. And the outcome of that risk assessment is actually really simple, but so powerful. High-risk features, they get comprehensive, super rigorous testing and detailed documentation. Medium-risk items, they get targeted testing with focus records. And for those low-risk features, a simple, streamlined verification is usually all you need with minimal records. The big takeaway here, the effort always matches the risk. All right, so we've seen the how. Now let's get to the why. What are the real tangible benefits you get when you make the switch to CSA? The biggest benefit isn't just about being faster or cheaper, it's about a culture change. The whole focus shifts away from this robotic compliance culture, just ticking boxes and stamping paperwork, to a real quality culture. It's about building genuine confidence that your software is safe and effective. It's really the difference between just doing things right and doing the right things. And once you have that new mindset, you start to see these huge wins on the ground. First off, the documentation burden is just slashed. That frees up your best people to stop being paper pushers and start being problem solvers. And because it's so flexible, CSA fits perfectly with modern development methods like Agile and DevOps, which gets rid of all those old validation bottlenecks. And the end result? You get a culture that doesn't just comply, but one that constantly improves and innovates. So, when you put all of this together, it becomes crystal clear that CSA isn't just some passing trend. It is the new standard. It's the future of compliance in the life sciences. At the end of the day, this whole shift represents a massive strategic opportunity. It's a chance to finally move beyond an approach that's driven only by compliance and move toward one that truly prioritizes risk, quality, and efficiency. And that's a win for the business, it's a win for innovation, and most importantly, it's a win for the patient. And that really leaves us with one final and really important question for you to think about in your own work. Is your organization ready to make that fundamental shift away from a culture that is just about compliance to one that is truly built around quality?